In 1900, a single hurricane wiped out an entire Texas city in one night. 8,000 people dead. $104 million in damage. That's $3.8 billion today. But that was just the beginning. Texas has been pummeled by monsters that redefined what destruction looks like. The numbers will shock you. Hurricane Alicia, 1983. Hurricane Alicia slammed directly into Houston. Category 3, storm with 115-mile-per-hour winds. This wasn't just another hurricane. It was the first major storm to hit Houston's downtown in over 40 years. Houston had grown massive since the last big hit. The downtown skyline was packed with new skyscrapers, glass towers reaching 75 stories high. City planners thought these buildings were hurricane-proof. They were wrong. Alicia's eye passed right over the city center at 2 a.m. Winds turned those glass skyscrapers into weapons. Windows exploded outward, sending sheets of glass crashing down 50 floors onto the streets below. The J.P. Morgan Chase Tower lost over 3,000 windows in one night. Downtown Houston looked like a war zone. The storm knocked out power to 1.5 million people across Texas. Traffic lights went dark. Air conditioning died in 100-degree heat. Some neighborhoods stayed without power for 2 weeks. Hospitals ran on backup generators for days. But the real damage was economic. Oil refineries shut down. The Port of Houston, America's second busiest port, closed completely. Shipping came to a dead stop. Every day the port stayed closed cost the Texas economy $50 million. 21 people died. Property damage hit $3 billion. That's $9 billion in today's money. Insurance companies paid out claims for months. But here's what made Alicia special. It changed how Houston prepared for storms. Before 1983, the city thought it was protected by distance from the coast. After Alicia, they learned that downtown skyscrapers don't stop hurricanes. They make them more dangerous. Hurricane Carla, 1961. Hurricane Carla became a monster in the Gulf of Mexico. Category 4, storm with winds hitting 175 miles per hour. But Carla wasn't just powerful. It was the first hurricane ever tracked by weather satellite. America watched this beast grow from space. The storm was massive. Wind fields stretched 400 miles across. That's bigger than the entire state of Texas. When meteorologists saw Carla's size on satellite images, they knew this would be different from anything that hit before. Carla made landfall near Port O'Connor, Texas. The storm surge reached 22 feet in some areas. Picture a 3-story building made of water crashing inland. Matagorda Bay saw surge heights that broke every record. Coastal towns simply disappeared under the water. But here's what made Carla deadly: the tornadoes. This hurricane spawned 26 confirmed tornadoes across Texas. Most hurricanes create a few small twisters. Carla created an army of them. F3 and F4 tornadoes ripped through cities already getting hammered by hurricane winds. It was like getting hit by 2 disasters at once. The economic damage was staggering. $408 million in 1961 dollars. That's $4.1 billion today. Cotton crops across South Texas were completely destroyed. The state's agricultural economy took years to recover. Oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico were torn apart. Some drilling rigs were never found. 46 people died, but it could have been thousands more. Carla was the first hurricane where mass evacuations were organized using satellite data. Weather forecasters could track the storm's exact path days in advance. Over 350,000 people fled the Texas coast. Without those evacuations, Carla would have been a massacre. Hurricane Rita, 2005. Hurricane Rita was spinning in the Gulf of Mexico as a Category 5 monster. Peak winds hit 180 miles per hour. This storm was so powerful, it made meteorologists nervous. Rita was heading straight for Houston, a city of 4 million people still watching the horror of Hurricane Katrina on TV. The evacuation was chaos. 2.5 million people tried to flee Houston at the same time. Every highway turned into a parking lot. Cars sat motionless for 12 hours in 100-degree heat. Gas stations ran out of fuel. People abandoned their vehicles and walked. Some died from heat exhaustion while stuck in traffic. The evacuation killed more people than the actual hurricane. Rita weakened before landfall, hitting as a Category 3 with 120-mile-per-hour winds near the Texas-Louisiana border. But this storm was still a destroyer. Storm surge reached 20 feet along the Texas coast. Entire communities like Holly Beach, Louisiana, were wiped off the map. Nothing left but concrete slabs where houses used to stand. The oil industry took a massive hit. Rita shut down 91% of oil production in the Gulf of Mexico. Gas prices jumped to over $3 per gallon nationwide. Refineries along the Texas coast flooded and shut down for weeks. Port Arthur, Texas, home to America's largest oil refinery, was underwater. 120 people died across multiple states. Property damage hit $18.5 billion, but the real cost was hidden in the economy. Every day, those refineries stayed closed. Gas prices climbed higher. One storm created a national energy crisis. Hurricane Ike, 2008. Hurricane Ike looked weak on paper when it hit Texas. Only Category 2 winds at 110 miles per hour. But Ike was a deceiver. This storm had something more dangerous than peak winds. It was absolutely massive. The wind field stretched 425 miles across. That's like a hurricane covering the distance from New York to North Carolina. Ike's enormous wind field pushed water for hundreds of miles. The storm surge was catastrophic. Along the Bolivar Peninsula, surge reached 20 feet high. The surge traveled 25 miles inland, flooding towns that thought distance would protect them. Galveston Island got destroyed again. Storm surge topped the 17-foot seawall that was built after the Great Galveston Hurricane in 1900. Water reached the third floor of buildings downtown. Cars floated through the streets like toys. The historic Strand District was underwater for hours, but Ike's real destruction was total erasure of entire communities. The Bolivar Peninsula had thriving beach towns with thousands of homes. After Ike, satellite images showed nothing but empty sand and concrete slabs. Entire neighborhoods vanished. Crystal Beach, Kaplan, Gilchrist. These weren't just damaged, they were deleted from the map. Search and rescue teams found survivors 3 days later, still trapped in attics. Some people rode out the storm in their houses and watched their neighbors' homes get swept away like matchsticks. The psychological impact was devastating. Entire communities had to rebuild not just houses, but their sense of home. 112 people died, but millions felt Ike's impact. $38 billion in damage made it one of the costliest storms in history. Ike proved that when hurricanes get big enough, wind speed becomes irrelevant. Hurricane Harvey, 2017. Hurricane Harvey slammed into Texas as a Category 4 monster with 130-mile-per-hour winds. But Harvey didn't behave like a normal hurricane. Most storms hit the coast and keep moving inland, weakening as they go. Harvey stopped. For 4 straight days, it sat over Houston like a massive water pump in the sky. The rain was biblical. Harvey dumped over 60 inches of water in some areas. That's 5 feet of rain from the sky in less than a week. To put that in perspective, Houston normally gets 49 inches of rain in an entire year. Harvey delivered more than a year's worth of rain in 4 days. The flooding was catastrophic beyond imagination. Entire neighborhoods disappeared under brown water. Interstate highways turned into rivers 10 feet deep. Cars floated down major streets. The Texas Medical Center, the world's largest medical complex, had to evacuate patients by helicopter from hospital rooftops. Over 300,000 people lost power. 40,000 people were evacuated from their homes. The Coast Guard rescued 11,000 people from rooftops and attics. Others used fishing boats to save families. Regular citizens became heroes, pulling people out of submerged houses. But Harvey's damage went far beyond Houston. The storm shut down 25% of America's oil refining capacity. Gas prices jumped nationwide. Chemical plants flooded and caught fire, sending toxic smoke across the region. The Port of Houston, critical for America's energy supply, closed for 6 days. 68 people died. The damage hit $125 billion, making Harvey the second costliest hurricane in U.S. history. Harvey proved that in the modern world, when one major city floods, the entire country feels the economic impact. The Great Galveston Hurricane, 1900. The deadliest natural disaster in American history was about to begin. The Great Galveston Hurricane approached Texas as a Category 4 monster with 145-mile-per-hour winds. But in 1900, there were no weather satellites, no emergency broadcasts, no evacuation plans. People went to bed not knowing death was hours away. Galveston was America's fourth largest city and the biggest port on the Gulf Coast. Wealthy families built mansions along the beach. The city was booming, confident, and completely unprepared. Galveston sat only 8 feet above sea level with no protection from the ocean. The storm surge was a moving mountain of water, 15 feet high and traveling at 30 miles per hour inland. When that wall of ocean hit the city, buildings didn't just flood, they exploded. Entire city blocks were swept away in minutes. The Tremont Hotel, Galveston's grandest building, had water reach the second floor. Families climbed into their attics as water rose through their houses. But the surge kept rising. Many drowned just feet below their roofs. Others were swept out to sea when their homes collapsed. Children were torn from their parents' arms by the current. Entire families vanished without a trace. By morning, 8,000 people were dead, 1/6 of the city's population killed in a single night. The survivors faced an overwhelming recovery operation that took months to complete. The city had to be rebuilt from nothing. The damage was $104 million in $1,900. That's $3.8 billion today. But the real cost was bigger. Galveston never recovered its status as Texas's major port. Houston took over and became the economic powerhouse. One hurricane changed the entire future of Texas. These 6 storms prove that Texas doesn't just get hit by hurricanes, it gets hit by history-changing disasters. The question isn't if another mega hurricane will hit Texas, it's when.